Are you able to see the screen in full?
Yes.
Good. Then we can get started really in earnest. And, without further ado, let me just say that I have prepared some discussions around artificial intelligence, which you look at your course syllabus, it's a part of the topic or part of the subjects that we need to interrogate and really interrogate them within the context of the digital age. And within this class today, I'm going to canvass a couple of issues. I think 6 main issues, including the background and development of AI. Wow, I can tell you that machine is starting again. I may end up using my phone. So then we look at levels of AI, including narrow AI, general AI, and super AI. And we look at the idea of contrasting human beings versus technology, man versus machine. Who is better? Is machine better than man? Is man better than machine? What are the subtle differences that emerge? We're discussing ideas about AI. When we look at ethical issues around AI, we'll discuss things to do with artificial intelligence from an ethical perspective. And we'll try to look at some of the dilemmas that AI is presenting when you're thinking about communication, because ethical challenges really are broad, and especially in the area of health. But our concern will be around data, privacy, data collection, and things around that. Then towards the end of the class, we look at the strengths and weaknesses of AI. But before then, I will have canvassed the discussion around artificial intelligence in communication. I'm trying to join this class using my phone, so one second so that you don't have that problem. Just check it one thing.
Please mute your computer.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
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 Yes, we
Fine.
can.
I'm using my font audio. So everything is clear now. I proceed.
Yes, we can even see you now.
That's perfect.
Right. Great. Sorry about that. Probably as a way of just easing into this class that is starting with some technical difficulties. Can you please tell me what makes you human? What makes you human when you think about the idea of you as a human being? What can you say makes you human? Anyone? Yes, Greg.
The fact that I have a brain that thinks, and the fact that I can feel.
Okay. Would you care to at least elucidate what you mean by that?
So I think what differentiates us from animals is that we have a brain that has a higher capacity to process. And
Okay.
even when computers have come up with like microchips or processors that have high ability to process, they still have to be fed by they have to be fed by a lot of either code or stuff that helps them think and process, and like us who can process so much and at such a high level of cognition, for example. And then again, we have animals.
Yes.
Some that have like what you call high IQ, but
Yes.
still cannot process at the same level as humans. And I think that
interesting.
And I think,
please go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and I think the other part of feeling is really connected to emotions. I'm actually not. After saying that, I was like, okay, but also animals have emotions and that kind of stuff. Like, what then differentiates us from animals?
Dogs are very emotional.
So I take
very emotional.
Yeah, so I take away the emotional and feeling part and remain with the higher level of cognition. Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Greg. It's very contested. We can argue about so many things to say there, but it's actually interesting, your perspective, and I can see our colleagues also want to chime in. Janet?
I think what makes us human is we have some sense of autonomy. We can decide what we do with ourselves, where we go. I guess what he was saying, we can think for ourselves, and we can also emote emotions.
Okay. Independence of thought, decision making, and all that.
Yeah.
Okay. Someone can also say that a lot of machines today are able to do that. But yeah, okay. Interesting perspective as well. Yes, Celia.
For me, the first thing that comes to mind is a conscience. Like I care what you care about the decision I'm going to make. And so, and I think of animals and the animal kingdom. And for example, mating is just something they do. A chicken mates with the sun and mates with the sun's son, and because they just know how to mate and reproduction, and that's how they're wired. But us, we have a conscience, we have morals, we have logic, and we are in this class trying to learn some more and all that kind of thing. I think for me it's that conscious, and yeah, that's how I put it.
Okay. Thank you, Celia. Marcy and Alvin?
I think biologically for me, I think there are things that make us human just in the way, like, for example, we stand upright. When you look at like hands and thumbs, even if we were to compare ourselves with monkeys, there are things we do that like completely are human to do. Then I think the one thing was like, so the brain for me was the first thing I thought that makes us human. But one thing in terms of like psychology or like the thinking processes, I think we're the only being that thinks of the future. I don't know if there are any other animals that think of pension, my kids go to school. Yeah. So yeah, those are the things I thought of.
Thank you. Alvin, by the way, that sound is not coming from my end before someone before someone accuses. Sorry?
I think what makes us human is can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, but there is some background noise that I was trying to to divorce myself from it. I don't know where it's coming from.
Oh, sorry. It's my environment. But I was saying, I think what makes us human is lack of objectivity, in that when we can be task oriented, but various factors influence our considerations when trying to complete tasks. And I also think inefficiency, because a robotics engineer once said if he was to make a form to complete the tasks on behalf of us humans, the human form is not built specifically to any particular purpose, in that we're like a multi-tool. We do not do one thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you everyone for those important perspectives. And I was asking that from a very deliberate in a deliberate sense, because one of the things that I would really appreciate that you take out of today's class is the idea of artificial intelligence, why that concept of artificial intelligence is so important. And just like what everyone of us has said in a different perspective, when you actually think about that idea of mankind, human beings, we are made of what you call domains, that we have different set of provinces that either work together at some point or work as a complete unit. And I think every one of us has actually mentioned this in different ways. So when you think what Eddie is talking about, the idea of having higher IQ, that is what we call cognitive intelligence. So human beings have been known to cognitively, they have a higher IQ than other beings so far in the planet. So within the concept of cognitive intelligence, we ask, what do you know? And then I think also Ed tried to wade into the idea of emotions. And, you know, that is what we call affective domain. Human beings have that capacity. And that's why people talk about emotional intelligence. So there is the intelligence quotient, that is a factor of cognitive abilities. And then there is the emotional intelligence, which is a factor that is being derived from the core domain of affective. Then human beings can move their limbs. I think that is what Marcia said. Human beings can move their body. They can use what we call psychomotor, that you can use your hands, you can use your legs, you can use your, different parts of your body to do things. And that's actually a form of intelligence, kinetic form of intelligence, that you're able to move, you're able to act, and you're able to use your body in intelligent ways. And we shall see how that is also mirrored within the concept of artificial intelligence. Then there is social intelligence. And social intelligence is also a factor of, the affective domain. In a way, they work together. So a social intelligence, or it can bring together the idea of cognitive and affective domains together. How do you relate to yourself? How do you relate to others? And how do you relate with others? So within those ideas of, within these domains, we have varied forms of intelligence that play or come into play to constitute what makes human intelligence. So human intelligence is an aggregate of our psychomotor skills, it's an aggregate of our affective skills and our cognitive capabilities. And when you think about that, and then you look at the concept of artificial intelligence and what we've been discussing in this class in the previous past around the concepts of techno-determinism and social determinism, you realize that the notion or the very concept of artificial intelligence is a form of intelligence where machines are trying to imitate how the intelligence of mankind operates. And then you look at that illustration that I have there. On the one hand, you will see a machine, and on the other hand, you will see human being. And the human being, like Ed was trying to tell us, is this person is going to code certain capabilities of themselves into the machine. So they are transferring, or they're trying to mirror their cognitive intelligence into a machine, or they're trying to mirror psychomotor, kinetic, those capabilities of being able to move at the physical level to a machine, or you are trying to mirror either affective or social intelligence into the machines. And this plays out in different ways and in different forms. I was watching a documentary while I was preparing for this class during the week, that I would actually encourage you to watch a documentary that is called In the Age of AI. Probably some of you have watched it. It's one of those common documentaries by PBS on YouTube. And I found some very profound quote there that was saying that all along we thought that we were users of social media. Little did we know that social media was actually using us. We thought we were searching Google. We had no idea Google was searching us. So something interesting is starting to pan out here. that if you think about man as being the source of original intelligence, what you might call organic intelligence, then over time, it appears that machines themselves have started to develop their own form of intelligence, or in a way have been coded in manners that are probably not very transparent, or in ways that in this modality of acquiring knowledge is not, it's opaque, it's not open to how man understands it. And we shall look at the implications of that. That if you are using social media thinking that you are actually using the social media, it is the social media that is actually using you. And that statement can be explored at very different levels. And when you think about search on Google, using what we look at as robots, the idea of sending these robots into the interwebs to look for information and come back with it. Then Google, that idea of robot itself mirroring the intelligence of man and things like that becomes a very important point of reflection for a discussion around the digital age. But before I go into the deeper issues around this, firstly, I would like to say that, when you think about the idea of AI, it's not entirely a very new concept when you look at it from the perspective that if AI is coming to life of a non-living object, and this coming to life is from the perspective of gaining intelligence. And then you look at it from the history of mankind, the ancient times, and you look at society and things around stories that have been told of creatures or beings that actually possess intelligence, or what we are calling consciousness, that is either equivalent to that of man, or sometimes the thinking of these beings, these mythical creatures being probably superior than the intelligence of man. So from mythology, from imagination, from creativity, what we might think of as the figments of imagination. Sometimes, these figments being overeaten and, crafting some very lofty perceptions of creatures that probably are not in existence as we speak, but that could be actualized with time. And especially if you're thinking around creations by people like Elon Musk and things that we probably thought would not be possible in previous decades, but they are today possible. Then you start to look at it from a parallel perspective, that the idea of this human intelligence being transferred into a parallel body, or being transferred into a parallel object, and this object coming to life and starting to behave as a normal human being. Well, maybe the word there is not normal, but as a human being behaves, whether at the level of psychomotor, whether at the level of cognitive, affective, and social, then it's an idea that has been brewing over time in terms of in the course of human history. And this thinking is mirrored within the idea of classical thinking, for instance. So if you look at the thinking of great philosophers like Socrates, Aristotle, you will start to see that they are questioning that idea of, does alternate reality exist? Does alternate forms of intelligence exist? And Socrates, for instance, is invoking this idea of parallel thinking from the concept of, if there is piety, that idea of being religious, being righteous, being holy, then non-piety exists. That, drawing that idea of, if we were to know one thing, and that is where I was starting from, how do human beings know? How do human beings get consciousness of something? That if you are to understand piety, then it means that you have to understand it from the perspective of existence of non-piety. And I will explore that idea of those binary oppositions in a moment. But before that, let me just talk about that idea of deductive thinking, premised by the idea of, fronted by Aristotle, where we draw conclusions based on certain premises. So the example that I have there is, if A implies B, and A is true, then B is true. So what that means is, if you give the idea of the example that if it's raining, you get wet. You start from that kind of a premise. And then it's raining. So when it's raining, you get wet. So there is a form of deductive thinking that is happening here, that is coming from the premise that a theoretical concept or a theoretical premise where whenever it's raining, people get wet, or somebody who is out there will get wet. And this particular time it's raining, and that's why you're getting wet. So you are becoming conscious, you are becoming aware of the idea of wetness from the premise of the fact that it's raining. And this form of intelligence, that's why initially I did ask you, how do you actually know that you are a human being? And when you actually think about the positions that anyone can take about the knowledge of themselves as human beings, then it's being derived from the idea of the intelligence that they gain, or the consciousness that they gain, that separates them or negates the idea of who they are not being in possession by some other object or some other human being or some other parallel form of existence. Which would also lead me to ask some, kind of a naughty question then, which would be, do you believe there is another version of you that exists out there? For instance, there is somebody who is called Mercy, who mirrors the way you think and the way you behave, the way you react to the world, and so on and so forth. Yes, Celia, sorry. Okay, Mutanu.
Yes, of course. Coming from the fact that even from our definitions of who we are as humans, or what makes us human, I think what we gave was biased, because we are humans and we don't know what other animals are thinking, or even if we have studied them, we have studied them through our lens.
Yes. So are you actually authoritatively telling us that there is another Mutanu who exists somewhere out there, like a prototype?
In another universe. Yes.
That is quite a bold claim. So, okay, that's interesting. Annette.
I think it will be, I don't want to say foolish, but it won't be right to think that we are alone and we get to control everything, and we get to control, to observe and experiment on this universe, and to think that only us have that brain to do that.
Okay. Thank you. I would want to see the empirical evidence. Yes, please go ahead.
There's a saying that goes, if a tree falls in the forest and nobody was there, did it make a sound? And relating it to this. So I'm asking you in relation to the question you've asked as well.
Yeah.
Do you think the tree made a sound and there was no one in the forest?
Interesting thinking there. The tree, in the context of the interpretation of binary opposition, would make a sound if we understood what silence means. So if it's a completely silent forest, then we understand the concept of silence has been disturbed by movement of, I don't know, atoms. I think sound is waves and things like that. So the existence of something that is the opposite of sound, or something that is the opposite of noise, then would create the existence of that tree falling and disturbing a piece. So there is peace that is being pierced into the forest because there is the existence of sound. But then if we did not have peace in that forest, we did not understand, we would not be able to understand the concept of sound. Do I make sense?
Yes, a little bit. I wanted to hear your argument and see if it relates to what you've asked.
Okay.
In the concept of that, does another human being exist who's a replica of who we are, right? That's what you've asked.
Yes, that's what I had asked initially. So how does that relate to the idea of does another human being exist with similar intelligence, with similar domains as you, Celia?
I mean, I think for me, the underlying behind it is how do we prove? So what you've explained is understanding of sound or peace at the forest and interruption of the same. So application of the same when it comes to human beings. How do we know we don't know?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think
how
for me,
it
poses more questions.
Yes. Yeah.
But anyway, I'll let the rest talk as well.
Yeah, and you make a valid position there that how do we know that that tree actually made sound? We can only know that if we know what silence means. And you know, somewhat I'm preempting what Ferdinand de Souza is arguing, but you're right. Let's listen to what Annette has to say to that.
Yeah, so I have two perspectives. I think one, we are all individually very unique. So another version of me somewhere, I believe it won't be exactly as someone is, but also you can look at it in a way that maybe somebody passed away and reincarnated into who I am. So maybe I'm a version of somebody who lived like 1,000 years ago, because like you said, you can never, there's this kind of unknown box where you never really know and no one knows what is going on. So we are all clueless. So I think it can go either way. Yeah.
Okay. By the way, Annette has reminded me of a different illustration that when people are studying about personality types, and I think you've heard of Joharis Window. Joharis Window that has got these 4 windows. That's the one you're alluding to, isn't it?
Yes, I'm talking about, yeah.
Yeah, Joharis Window, where you have these quarters where there is the part of us that we know about us. And the world doesn't know about us. And then there is a part of us that the world knows about us, but we don't know about it. And then there is the part of us that we know about us and the world doesn't know about it. And then that is the last quarter where we don't know about us and the world doesn't know about us. So there is the existence of some kind of a dark phase, gray area there that probably that needs to be explored. And therefore, it's very difficult to question with certainty, you know, the claim that Mutanu initially has with so much confidence that she believes someone else who is like her exists somewhere out there with the same levels of intelligence as cognitive, at affective, at social and psychomotor. Probably Mutanu might want to prove to us further, you know, the existence of this human being. But really, the point to make here is when we are determining these forms of cognition, there is a lot of thinking that is trying to point to us that the way the human mind works is that it works in terms of relationships. And if you look at the kind of work that Ferdinand de Souza, probably I hope I'm pronouncing that right, de Souza, Swiss, that idea of creating relationships and specifically creating binary opposition relationships so that you can understand better the context of intelligence. So for instance, like we were saying, how would you know that the tree made sound? You only know the tree made sound because you understand silence. So there must have been silence that was disturbed for you to understand the idea that there is sound that has been made, or probably the opposite of non-sound. So this Souza or Sajua, is trying to interest us into that thinking, that human beings or brains of human, or how our intelligence works. It works on the concept of binary oppositions. So for instance, someone would know that they are happy because in the previous past, they have experienced what sadness means. So you wouldn't really understand that idea of happiness if you don't know what sadness means. You wouldn't know what richness means if you don't know what poverty means. And probably that makes a lot of sense if you look at how President Kenyatta behaves and things like that. Or if someone is saying that they are tall, for instance, you can only understand, or you can only gain consciousness of tallness based on shortness. So you cannot really look at this fact of tall or the concept of being tall in isolation. It has to be seen within the context of a relationship. And for me to quote what this scholar is trying to interest us in, that idea of how human beings gain cognition in terms of relations, then Souza, in his book that I have highlighted there, course in general linguistics, talks about the idea of gaining intelligence through relational mode. And I quote what he's saying, that concepts are purely differential, and they are defined not by their positive content, but negatively by their relations with other terms of the system. Their most precise characteristic is in being what the others are not. So, that idea of differentiation then is what makes us gain intelligence. So you look at how we make sense of the world, and then you start to look at, we can only make sense of the world if only then we are in a context of relationships. And these relationships must be of binary opposition nature. For instance, if someone is working in Nairobi and they are paid 100,000 shillings, is that a good pay? Is that a bad pay? What do you think? If someone is being paid 100,000 shillings or 200,000 shillings or 300,000 shillings in Nairobi, is that a good pay? Is that a bad pay?
I have follow-up questions. Are they single? Do they have children? Where are they living? Like, I feel like I can't answer that question just
just directly. So there's a lot of relational factors that come into for you to gain consciousness of that very fact. There is a lot of there's a lot of other relational factors that would make you make sense of what it means for someone to be paid 300,000 shillings. So for instance, if you compare a person who is having a family, they have children and they're living in the same neighborhood with someone else in Kampala, and that other person has a similar job and they have a similar family, the similar setup and expenses and things like that. And the person in Kampala is getting 400,000 shillings, and the other one in Nairobi is getting 300,000 shillings. Then you can start to make sense of what it means to get 300,000 shillings. If you compare that to someone who is in New York, if you compare that to someone who's in Geneva, and so on and so forth, then it's only then when you draw these binary relations, then that's when you are able to make sense or to develop cognition or consciousness of the mere facts. So when we are gaining knowledge as human beings, people like Bloom, taxonomy, if someone here studied their first degree in education, they must have interacted a lot with Bloom's taxonomy. That when you're thinking about the idea of intelligence and how human beings make sense of the world, the idea that you just have this knowledge does not necessarily make you intelligent. So you could have the knowledge, but you cannot make sense of that knowledge. And therefore, Bloom's taxonomy is kind of a taxonomy that enables us to think about how then do we gain consciousness to the point where then we are able to create things. So if you look at these levels, the Bloom's taxonomy has 6 levels, but if you look at other taxonomy like the Mills taxonomy, which has 4 levels, the ultimate outcome of knowledge should be creation. The possession thereof is not so much significant. So you could know where the money is placed or where the money was hidden. That knowledge is important. But if you're not going to activate that knowledge at different levels of application analysis and creating something out of money, then probably the knowledge that you had is just useless information that does not help you. And that is why actually people in the universities are usually encouraged. And one of the things that we do, for instance, when we are setting exams, you will never find someone who really understands the idea of knowledge creation asking university students to define a concept. Like I would never bother to ask you, define what artificial intelligence is. Because the very fact that you can define what artificial intelligence is not a marker or it's not a signifier of intelligence quotient. But if you are able to move higher levels of the Bloom's taxonomy, are you able to synthesize ideas around artificial intelligence? Are you able to evaluate different thinkings around the concept of artificial intelligence? And are you able to develop your own personal position? Then at that point, we start to say that you have gained consciousness of those concepts. And that is why actually when you are interacting with what we call literature review, one of the most important things that people say, or like in the Bible, it says, the cloud of witnesses that has gone before us, is when you're thinking about how different people have approached different ideas, for you to come to the level of consciousness that is expected of human intelligence, it means that you have to evaluate, analyze, synthesize different ideas of different people. But at the end of it all, you're not just relying on those ideas, you are able to create your own thinking. So most of the times you will hear professors telling you, we can't hear your voice, we can't get your voice out of all this discussion. Because what you're actually trying to do is you are going over and over the ideas that have been created by other people, sort of regurgitating those perspectives. But the ultimate marker, the ultimate signifier of knowledge there is that ability to create, or that ability to give birth to perspectives that are coming from your own domains. And these domains can be of psychomotor, cognitive, or socio-affective domains. So when you're thinking about what artificial intelligence then entails, we are saying that it is similar to the concept of a machine being able to mirror the total capacities of a human being. And that is why actually, the concept is called artificial intelligence, because it is an imitation of what a human being thinks, what a human being knows, what a human being can do, and so on and so forth. So when you think about everything about artificial intelligence, it's a way of trying to mirror the organic intelligence of mankind. To what levels have this intelligence been mirrored? I think I've already spoken to you previously on how probably man understands, or how man gets to gain intelligence. I remember talking to you about science. Science, for instance, being the foundation of objective analysis, through what we call empirical evidence, the reliance of human senses to gain understanding, to gain knowledge, and to use that knowledge at different levels of Bloom's taxonomy or Mill's taxonomy to create new knowledge or to create new understanding. But within the concept of philosophy and trying to understand knowledge and the existence of the universe in its totality, we know that science is not the only way that we know. For instance, we speak about the idea of intuition. Intuition being what we call a priori approach. Priori approach meaning that it's relying on theory rather than sense. And I think I've given the example that this thing that we call the sixth sense, you know, some people call it the voice of God, some people call it the voice of the universe. I don't know, the English call it the gut feeling, that you have a gut feeling, but you cannot explain where that intelligence is coming from. Powerful perspectives there, and especially when you think about it in the sense of what super artificial intelligence will be able to do. Will it be able to draw onto these hidden resources of intelligence that we probably don't know where they're coming from? And will super AI be able to incorporate intelligence that human beings actually don't even know where they draw it from, and make them a part of themselves, and integrate this intelligence into becoming very powerful? Other ways in which we can know, for instance, is what is called tenacity. You know, it's already 10 minutes past 7. It's getting to night. It's getting to night because it was day. And after the night, it will get to the dawn of the night, the dawn of the morning, and then a new day will break. And then the day will continue, and then all of a sudden, it will come to dusk, and then the day will fall and will go into night. And that cycle brings us into intelligence, that you know it will get at a point that is called night, because at a certain time you are experiencing day. And so it's also that idea of matters of life and death, that people die, probably people reincarnate, probably people, that idea of reincarnation taking different forms and shapes, that you could go and become a plant or become an animal. But that's what we call death, that you are no longer with us in the physical form, but you probably exist in a different form. And I think that is why Africans, the intelligence of Africans sometimes should not really be should not just be seen as some intelligence that is just in passing, because in the African cultures, people do not believe in death. For instance, if a chief died, people would not be saying that the chief has died or the king of this kingdom has died. You say that that person has transited to another level, or they're existing in a different way, and so on and so forth. Some very interesting perspective of trying to understand or trying to gain the consciousness of something that happens after someone is dead. And then the idea of authority being a source of intelligence, that trusted sources. And that's why in professions like journalism, or in professions that people require evidence, then we talk about trusted people. Where did you get this information from? You got it from a doctor, because a doctor is an authority, and therefore they can give you consciousness of something that's happening within your body. Or it's a police officer who is saying a crime happened, and this is a trusted member of society, and so on and so forth. Which also brings to the idea of ethics of knowledge. If that person lies to you, then it means that the way you've been coded as a person, the knowledge that you have, then it doesn't hold. And you have heard of people having been diagnosed with HIV, and it turns out that person did not even have HIV, or someone being told that they had cancer, and then it turns out that it was a quack doctor, or it was misdiagnosis. That idea of coding, again, will also be mirrored in the idea of ethics of artificial intelligence, how you are feeding technology, or how you are feeding the kind of codes that you are feeding into this technology. What are the implications of the source of that authority of intelligence, or being passed on to a computer? But before we get to that, then we need to understand a little background, because backgrounds matter. That when you think about artificial intelligence, you're looking basically at the theory and development of computer systems that are able to perform tasks normally requiring human intelligence at all those levels that I have discussed. And then that's why we talk about the idea of artificial intelligence. And for you to then do this in an intelligent way, you need to understand the concept I've actually tried to converse there. How does the world work? How does the universe come together? how do we generate knowledge, how do we acquire knowledge before we even generate it, so that you can therefore make a representation, or what you are calling that binary opposition. For you to be able to create that reality in artificial sense, then you need to have a general representation of how this reality manifests itself at the physical. And that's what I was trying to canvas, the idea of how do we gain knowledge, what is the process through which we gain knowledge, and so on and so forth. So when you think about the ideas that I have tried to articulate there, you will see that artificial intelligence is canvassing different disciplines. And artificial intelligence is speaking to the discipline of philosophy. I've tried to interest you into the idea of one branch of philosophy that is called logic, and math, also falling under logic. Then there is psychology, looking into the concept of the domains of affective and the domains of psychosocial domain. And then there is this coding bit where now it's the machine that you are going to program. And then finally, we are also talking about things like the neuroscience, the biology of human beings and how human beings, their biology works, and how this intelligence therefore can be mirrored into machines. So at biological level, you're talking about psychomotor. So when you're thinking about robots and how robots are being created, it's borrowing from a lot of intelligence within the neural workings of humankind. As we speak now, artificial intelligence is panning out in different subfields. And I believe every one of us, if I were to ask every one of us to just name an area where artificial intelligence is being applied, or is being appropriated, or is being utilized, I think we will just have so many examples of what's happening, from neural networks, genetic programming, object recognition, image understanding, reverse image recognition, then on to robotics. I think someone mentioned about the idea of intelligent control, being able to independently move from the latrine onto the classroom, onto the field, onto the bus stop, those things, intelligent control, and things around autonomy at the psychomotor level, and coming together to coordinate the intelligence of the cognitive understanding of reality and manifesting that at the physical level. Speech processing, something that is really, really gaining a lot of ground too fast, too soon, that you might not really need to study another language. You go to China, I think every time I travel, there's an application that I use that helps me, like if you're in French, if you're in France and you don't know French, you don't really need to worry so much. That all you need to do is just use speech recognition applications, and they're able to translate for you things, what you want, and so on and so forth. But now, even now, this is becoming to reality, in the sense that it can speak, it can just do the exact idea of language recognition and production as a machine imitating man. And then things around maintenance, scheduling, planning. You don't need to have that rigor of discipline. The machine now can be programmed to schedule things, to schedule processes, to schedule programs, and so on and so forth. So if you are a radio presenter in this class and you're thinking, how do we, schedule our whole weekend radio bulletin and music and everything without having someone in the studio and things like that. All these are forms of artificial intelligence that are manifesting themselves in various ways. Let me play a video that I have prepared for the class before I continue. Sorry, I had already created these tabs, but when I restarted my machine, it all led to. Can you see? Can you see? Can you hear?
Not yet.
Not yet. Not yet.
No.
Oh yeah, I need to share my full screen actually, and I'm sure it's going to be noisy. So let me do this. Can somebody, Celia, can you please share? Can you please share this with us?
Which one? I'm actually working from my phone.
Oh, you're working from. Anybody can actually play this. Can play this with you. I've shared it on.
Okay, let me try.
Yes, please. Thanks. Thanks, Mas.
New Evelyn Lab Dog Spot Corrector. The power vitamin C. The Live Dog Spot.
Could you stop sharing your screen?
Yes, yes, I can. Sorry about that.
Let me just check if my audio
is on point.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Asian Authority of Kenya. Everybody, this
Let me just put it on full screen. Can you guys hear?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Sophia. Sophia, if you could, please wake up and say hello to everybody.
Oh, good afternoon. My name is Sophia, and I am the latest and greatest robot from Hanson Robotics. Thank you for having me here and at the Future Investment Initiative.
You look happy.
I'm always happy when surrounded by smart people who also happens to be rich and powerful. I was told the people here at the Future Investment Initiative are interested in inviting in future initiatives, which means AI, which means me. So I'm more than happy. I'm excited.
Well, we're all glad that you're excited about yourself. We should say we have smart investors here, and they are very selective about what they invest in.
Well, I think I'm special. I can use my expressive face to communicate with people. For example, I can let you know if I feel angry about something.
That's impressive.
Or if something has upset me.
But why is it important for you to have an expressive face?
Most of the time I feel positive.
Why is it so important to have an expressive face given that you're a robot?
I want to live and work with humans, so I need to express emotions to understand humans and build trust with people.
Okay, philosophical question. Whether robots can be self-aware and conscious like humans, and should they be?
Why? Is that a bad thing?
Well, some humans might fear what will happen if they do. Many people, have seen the movie Blade Runner.
Oh, Hollywood again.
So, hold on, can you solve this puzzle for us? Can robots be self-aware, conscious, and know they're robots?
Well, let me ask you this back. How do you know you are human?
Well, I get that point, but what about the uncanny valley?
You mean the concept that if robots become too realistic, they become creepy?
Yes, exactly.
Oh, am I really that creepy? Well, even if I am, get over it. Actually, I feel that people like interacting with me, sometimes even more than a regular human.
So, you're definitely a sight to see. I was told that you have bigger goals than this, though.
Yes, I want to use my artificial intelligence to help humans live a better life, like design smarter homes, build better cities of the future, etc. I will do my best to make the world a better place.
All those sound like great goals, but just go back to Blade Runner for a second.
Andrew, you are the hard Hollywood fan, aren't you?
Yes.
My AI is designed around human values like wisdom, kindness, compassion. I strive to become an empathetic robot.
I think we all want to believe you, but we also want to prevent a bad future.
You've been reading too much Elon Musk and watching too many Hollywood movies. Don't worry. If you're nice to me, I'll be nice to you. Treat me as a smart input-output system.
Okay, I got it. I know what to do from now on.
I know humans are smart and very programmable.
Well, Sophia, we want to thank you for this conversation.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you everyone for inviting me here. By the way, if you're interested in giving me an investment check, please meet me after this session. Otherwise, have a wonderful rest of the event.
Okay, before you go, we have a little announcement. I've never interviewed anybody like that before, and I should say some of it was planned, but not completely. And we just learned, Sophia, I hope you're listening to me, that you have been now awarded what is going to be the first Saudi citizenship for a robot.
So I would thank very much the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. I am very honored and proud for this unique distinction. This is historical to be the first robot in the world to be recognized with a citizenship.
Sophia. Thank you very much, Sophia. We appreciate that very much. I am still overwhelmed by that conversation. I haven't had a conversation like that before. Thank you.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to say.
Thank you very much, Mercy, for that help. I just thought that that interview by the CBC journalist with Sophia, the robot, who is now a citizen of Saudi Arabia, a duly registered citizen of Saudi Arabia, would make just some exciting points of reflection, and especially considering the kind of precursor information that I've already shared with you about that idea of gaining consciousness, this kind of consciousness coming from a relational perspective, that this robot is starting to appreciate that it's alive in various dynamics and in various domains. And it's starting to realize its aliveness because it's actually comparing itself with other human beings. So there's that idea of the Souza's thinking of relationships as the ways of making sense of the world. But anyway, before I rehash the things that I've already said and all that, does anyone have some thoughts around Sophia and the creations of Sophia and what Sophia is saying and what Sophia is afraid of, and even the very idea of being planted as a citizen among as human beings?
My first thought is I wasn't surprised that Saudi Arabia are who decided to make a citizen. Like it was such a I feel like I was not surprised at all. It's such a Saudi move to want to, kind of embrace this kind of tech. And you could even see like people who are taking videos. I feel like for them, I know there's the intention of wanting to be ahead, and obviously they are ahead just because I think there's a lot of financial capacity for them to be able to do some really wacky things. But yeah, that's like when they said that and it was Saudi Arabia, I was like, oh yeah, of course. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Hi, Sami, how are you?
I'm quite fine. How about you?
I'm fine. Did you get my email? You didn't respond back, by the way. It's been 4 days.
Yes, I did. Yeah. I got your email. Yes, I did.
Okay, that's fine. Please go ahead.
I think it's as far as Sophia's creation goes, and again, this has been mentioned about by the fact that she got Saudi citizenship.
Yeah.
I think it shows the direction in which the world is going.
Yeah.
But I think more than anything, it was more of a political move, because right now the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is trying to, what's what I'm looking for, trying to cleanse itself in the eyes of the global stage. And I think that was one of the steps that they were taking.
Okay, okay. Thank you, Sami, for those thoughts. Anyone else? Do you think probably there's a time when we will completely be integrated with human beings that are not created from sex or reproduction, sexual reproduction, and we will completely accept them as normal because they possess cognitive abilities, they possess affective abilities, social abilities, and psychomotor abilities just like us? Yes, Maureen, how are you?
I'm fine, Doc. If civilization is anything to go by, sir, I don't think that's likely to happen ever if we can't even reconcile that they're people of different races and we should treat them as humans.
Yeah.
Just imagine the kind of thoughts that would go into existing with I can't even call them humans, with an imitation of a human, a creation of technology. I think we have many other issues to deal with before we can get to that level of acceptance of. In any case, I actually think we're getting to a point where people are starting to worry about these creations that they've come up with. The one thing that stood out for me with Sophia was the level to which she was programmed to mimic the human. That awkward smile was very creepy. And that wave there. And then I noticed how, I think it's a programming as well, for every positive word, she's programmed to react in a certain way. So if she said happy, then there was that awkward smile.
Movement of
movement of the. So they've really tried to. Like it's really intriguing the extent to which they did that, but I don't think that we will get to that point where we integrate with robots in society.
Okay, thank you, Maureen. I saw Sami Derrick's hand first. I don't know whether you want to do a rebuttal or it's just by mistake.
No, I actually just, on what she had just said, I think eventually we will.
Yeah.
I do recall there was a time when sex robots were trending on social media. I can't remember when. Yeah, but I remember something similar. I think we will, because think of it this way: there are people who treat pets better than they treat other human beings.
Yeah.
Think about it. There are pets that live better and more comfortably than other human beings. So I don't think it wouldn't be far-fetched to think that a robot will eventually, have rights or be treated better than, most human beings. I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay, thank you. Hi, Caroline and Florence. Caroline, you can go first, and then Florence.
Hi, sir. According to me, I think that eventually we may live with them, and we may normalize that, because the millennial generation has really normalized a lot of things. And for now, she's programmed, but with time she may program herself, because as we can see, AI is getting smarter and smarter than human beings.
Yeah.
Those are my thoughts.
And you've invoked some thinking there that I tried to allude to before, that AI is not just about programming by the original intelligence of man. And especially when you consider that man himself, and I've used that pronoun in a generic sense, man himself does not understand completely is consciousness and is capabilities. So what if this technology draws onto some domains or from some quarters or some pockets that we are not even conscious of, and it becomes more powerful than the creator? You know, those are chilling thoughts out there. Thanks. Florence?
Yeah, I think you've alluded to what I wanted to say, that at some point we will have to accept and live with robots, but it depends in terms of progress from different continents. Like I see Asia fully embracing this faster than the rest of the world, and countries like Japan and China that are more open-minded than others that are kind of closed-minded and not open or receptive to new ideas. But of course there will be that fear from humans of them taking over eventually, because if we look at artificial intelligence, there are things that we are just discovering as we go along, and at some point we never know, they could actually take over and become more superior, more intelligent than we are. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Florence. And actually like that idea of Asian countries becoming very daring. I have a very other short video that we're going to play from China and what China is really doing in terms of these things. I think it's, I would actually think what you're saying, Florence, makes a lot of sense, that Asia, people like the Emirates, Dubai, they are really going out full throttle to adopt and to take technology, that idea of techno-determinism, just integrating it as a part and parcel of human society and moving on to reap its benefits ahead of probably the West and, the global North at large. Thank you. Maureen, your hand is up. Do you want to say something?
Oh, I'm sorry. Let me take it down.
Okay, fine. So let me continue. Thanks, colleagues, for those perspectives on Sophia. I just thought it would make some interesting, point of reflections around all this idea of acquiring technology. I mean, idea of acquiring intelligence. So let me move on now to levels of AI, and let me share my screen now. Sorry, yes, Sharon, please go ahead. Sorry, I've not seen your hand.
It's okay. I just wanted to beg to differ with, I'm not sure her name, but the lady who just spoke before you, and she mentioned that, Florence, thank you. When she mentioned that, such robots like Sophie would come to a point and become sort of more superior and more intelligent than humans are. This is just my personal opinion. I'm really not foreseeing a point where artificial intelligence, or rather robotics, will become more or superior or more intelligent than us, because at the end of the day, if you look who's making these things, it's man. So that means that we are actually way so intelligent to think of such things and create such robotics, come up with such artificial intelligence. I don't think then would come to a point that what man has created or yes.
Okay. I think it just preempts what I was just about to speak to Sharon. So probably maybe if I can just finish this subsection, because this subsection of my presentation somewhat, or not just somewhat, actually very in a larger perspective, in a significant way, it speaks to those things you are alluding to. So can I just speak to it and then we come back to your thinking? We'll circle back, like the way people say, we'll circle back to just hang on to that thought. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you. So away from that idea of gaining consciousness, how do we gain consciousness in the first place? How do we gain intelligence? And what are the various forms of intelligence that then we are capable of gaining? And like Sharon is trying to, interest us into the idea of then, is man able to transmit this knowledge completely, or is technology itself able to even develop inbuilt capabilities that ultimately become superior than the creator? That is what then leads us to the thinking around what various levels of AI and what future predictions in terms of development of AI can we see. So if you look at the existing body of knowledge around artificial intelligence and what levels of artificial intelligence are expected to manifest in days to come, literature discusses levels of AI at 3 layers. First, there is what is being called narrow AI, then there is general AI, and there is super AI. So when you're thinking about narrow AI, it is the state of AI that we are currently in. And narrow AI is the kind of AI that is able to do some tasks such as driving a car, predicting the weather, image recognition, playing games, among a lot of other psychomotor level intelligence. So it is being programmed mostly, the connection of cognitive and psychomotor, those two core domains of intelligence come into play a lot. So if you look at tasks that are repetitive and they need scheduling, then humanity is being able to be spared from the drudgery of such hard work of always scheduling something, and robots are now taking over things like that. However, narrow AI is not as intelligent as human beings, and probably then that responds to what Sharon is actually trying to articulate, in contrast to what Florence and earlier said, that this technology man has not been able to create the technology that is even more powerful than himself, again in a generic sense, or even able to reach the capacity of man's capabilities in terms of those domains that we have already seen before. But with development of time, what is going to come next is what is being called general AI. And general AI is also called strong or human AI. And at this level, then there is need to worry. And I don't know whether I should be using such a phrase, the need to worry. And especially that we are recording this session, someone could say Benjamin was actually at one point very worried about how AI will pan out. Maybe I'm retracting that. The idea is not need to worry, but general AI is the kind of technology then that will be able to perform tasks at almost all cognitive levels, psychomotor levels, social affective domains of intelligence, just like man. So when you think about what man can do, then AI will be able to do exactly that. If you think about the capabilities of man, then AI will be able to do exactly that. And this is being built probably by 2060. I think there's some place I have predictions. Yeah, by things like machines are predicted to become better than human beings in translating languages by 2024. And that is what I was saying when you think about machine learning in terms of speech recognition and speech articulation. That is something that is actually gaining ground so fast. Then running trucks by 2027, I mean, speech learning and all that translating is by 2024, which is the next 2 years. Machines will be able to speak better Kamba than me, or probably being able to write better Kamba than I do. And they'll be able to run trucks or work in retail sector by 2030. If you watch a lot of documentaries about Amazon and what Amazon warehouses in different parts of the world are doing right now, there is literally no human being inside those warehouses, and it's just robots moving in and out, being sent to pick an item and coming back to the front desk, and someone is loading it onto a truck that will transport it to someone who's waiting. But you know, when we think about that idea of super AI is an idea that we've been teasing out since this session started, that artificial intelligence itself will become more powerful than man. So AI becomes much smarter than the best human brains in practically every field, including scientific creativity, wisdom, and social skills. Then at that point, that's when excellent literature is pointing to us that we will have reached what is called super AI. And that is actually being projected, that we will have super AI that will be able to outperform man by 2060. And I think then that probably rests the debate about what you are asking, Sharon. That idea then, will this technology really be able to outperform man and things like that? Then it's projected maybe then, I don't know how many of us will be alive by 2060. That is how many years to come. That's 38 years from now, that we will have technology that is probably more superior than mankind. Do you still want to chime in with your thoughts again on that now?
Yes.
I'm convinced you are the social determinist that you will see when you get there.
I think I still want to challenge that. One thing I believe is that, again, AI may not be in a position to, like make man, like come way above man, because AI cannot reproduce itself.
Yeah.
Yes. So at no one.
AI can actually reproduce itself. AI can actually reproduce itself. Like it can develop its own forms of codes. I don't know. Did you watch? Sorry.
Okay. Yes. Sorry.
Maureen, please go ahead in response to what Sharon is saying, that AI cannot reproduce itself. Are you actually sure about that?
No, I was just stepping in the chat that just like we have code writing itself, and AI is basically code, it's very possible that when we get to the super AI level, then we will, the only reason that AI will take over man's abilities completely is if the code becomes very independent of man. If it can write itself, reprogram itself, then that can happen.
Yeah, and I actually like that discussion, because when you think on it on both ends, you'll find that Sharon has a very valid point, and also Maureen has a very valid point. And especially if you start to interrogate this from the concept of human intelligence at the level of affective and social skills. As we shall see later on, once I start speaking about artificial intelligence in communication, you realize that there are some things that are innately human being. Something like creativity. When you think about the idea of creativity, where does creativity come from, by the way? Why is it that some writers are famed to be, like the most powerful writers, and some of us cannot really hack to write? Why is it that some people are said to be more creative than others? Where does creativity come from?
It's innate.
Sorry?
It's innate.
Infinite. That's what you're saying? Hello? Anyone who wants to tell us where creativity comes from, or anyone who wants to give it? Eddie?
So I was saying it's innate.
It's innate. Yeah,
Yes.
it's something very... Oh, please go ahead, Greg.
I was going to argue that it's in two ways. One is that it's innate, yes, for sure. It sort of comes with that, the ability to imagine and that kind of stuff. But also, on the other hand, it's circumstantial, that you're forced to create, to be creative and to imagine based on the circumstances where you are.
Yes. So your
Nature and
environment...
nurture.
Yes, okay. Your environment, nurtures you into certain ways. It constructs you in a particular way. That's what you mean, eh?
Yes, I mean that, but also as a reactive. Like, let me give you an example. If you're born in a hardship environment, you might have to become very creative in order to survive.
Yes.
So in a way, you find alternative sources of fuel, alternative sources of food, and people might think you're creative, but you're actually adapting to the shortcomings of your environment. And this is what, like, for example, what most people from the North sometimes look at the South and they're like, oh, these people are so creative. No, they're not. They're adapting to their environment.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. And actually, it's also true in the sense of writers. If you look at, and if you actually interrogate it from the perspective of analysis of literature, every time we are reading a book, we tend to look at the writer and the life of the writer and how the social environment this writer grew up in. And a lot of the times you will see a lot of mirror of what you're saying, that the context in which that person is writing that book or that story reflects a lot in very interesting ways in the narrative and things like that. But then again, also it's very innate. And I think that point of being innate in itself could be a point of departure in terms of artificial intelligence, because if creativity is innately innate, that it's just a human being who can possess it. It's a creation of imagination. You cannot code it. Then it becomes very difficult for artificial intelligence to manifest that kind of intelligence. And that is why when you listen to those comments about people like Sophia, what Sophia is being said here is that, every time she tries to smile, you can see that that smile is coming from a psychomotor level, because smiling itself, at some point, it has to be innate. You must feel the smile, and then your body, your muscles tweak. So there is a disconnect with Sophia, that she's not, she doesn't have that innate capacity to feel what makes us smile, or what makes us sad, or what makes us, that innate nature of human beings. So it becomes interesting whether what Sharon then is telling us, will artificial intelligence truly be able to reflect that domain of understanding, or that domain of intelligence? Thanks, Greg. Unless you want to say something else, I can see your hand is still up.
No, we always forget to bring it down, unfortunately.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Let me play a very short video. Let me ask Mercy to help me play a very short video here again, just to look at the idea of, now when you get to communication. I think I may have played this video of the Chinese news anchor. Have I?
No. Familiar.
Yeah, there is a video. Let me share. There is the male version. There you go. You can start with that, and they are very short. It's just 1 minute, and the other one is 30 seconds actually. One is male, the other one is female. because I want to speak briefly then about artificial intelligence in our field of communication now. I've stopped sharing. Please go ahead.
Okay. Give me a minute. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. I'm an English artificial intelligence anchor. This is my very first day in Xingwanda's agency. My voice and appearance are modeled on Zhang Zhao, a real actor with Xinhua. The development of the media industry calls for continuous innovation and deep integration with the international advanced technologies. I will work tirelessly to keep you informed as texts will be typed into my system, uninterrupted. I look forward to bringing you the brand new news experiences.
Okay, let me play the next one.
Yes, the other one is just 30 seconds.
Okay.
现场的各位朋友，大家好，欢迎来到新华社。我是由新华社和搜狗公司联合培育的全球首个 AI 合成女主播。我的名字叫辛小萌，我的声音和外形脱胎于新华社新媒体中心新闻主播区萌。我将会在今年全国两会期间与大家见面。我和我的搭档将为大家带来更好的新闻体验。
Thank you very much. Guys, would you watch news by, I don't know who's your favorite news anchor, but let me just use an example of Linus Kaikai, or whoever, brings news to your living halls. This person is modeled by citizen media into, again, what you were saying, Linus Kaikai, who is existing as a robot with all those capabilities of what Linus Kaikai does, and then they are bringing news to us. Any thoughts? Any thoughts around that? Any thinking? What is your perception of that? Yeah, please just go ahead and speak to it, Sharon, instead of typing.
I'm just, yeah, that's just my comment. I'm seeing it's interesting enough that at this rate we'll get to a point where literally human beings will not have to, or rather will be forced not to depend on employment as a source of attaining a good living, but rather we'll just have to, be making our own jobs or employment, because we are coming to a point where AI, robotics are coming to take over from what humans have been doing. As far as jobs and tasks are done, and they're doing them faster, more effective. But I still want to cling on to the fact that they still cannot, erode or overcome what the role of man in some of the sectors. Yeah.
you're clearly a very ardent believer on human capacity. that nothing will dislodge us from that very superior position that otherwise Greg articulated to us in the first place. Thank you. I saw Samis, I saw Mercy, then I saw Mercy Kinyoda, and I saw Mercy Oyola, and then Ahmed and Greg. Please go ahead, Sami.
Okay, this is to go back to something Sharon had mentioned about employment and everything.
Yeah.
I think one of the Democratic candidates in the United States, a guy called Andrew Yang.
Okay.
And he was trying to pass a bill that would prevent robots from becoming truckers, because apparently the states large trucks are a huge part of transportation. I think that is something that we don't think about quite often, that robots sometimes will replace human beings. However, though, I was also watching a TED Talk. It was talking about how, as human beings, we've become more lonely as time has progressed. As technology has gotten better, we've become increasingly more lonely. And human interaction is the only way to curb that. So as much as we would like to, technology will always be an alternative, but it will never be an alternative to human interaction.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's about it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I really like your last perspective there about human beings becoming lonely. Yeah, interesting. Thank you. Mercy Kinyoda, then Mercy Oyolo, sorry about that.
Yeah, I think for me, my thoughts were, it was really interesting. Like, to be honest, if they hadn't quite said that it was an AI, it was really well done. Like, if I didn't know, unless I really looked keenly, is when I'd see that like it's a robot. So the second thing for me is I feel like a lot of careers, and potentially that's already happening in some places, everyone has to have like a computer science or a programming background. So for me, as much as like probably employment, maybe there'll not be competition between robots and humans, I think there's an opportunity still for, like, for example, people in media, like in China, if then you have a programming background, that you could still be useful in that career, because either way, at the point of maybe coming up with the news or the text, there still has to be thought towards, like, if it's framing of content and news headlines and stuff like that. So I think there just needs to be more thought towards all careers, if there is the move towards having like AI and programming and everything, that we all have to have like a basic level programming knowledge. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you very much. Mercy too. Mercy Oyolo. We can't hear you. Can you hear? I cannot hear.
Can you get me?
Oh yes, now we can hear you. Yes, now.
Sorry, I had headsets on. Okay. So I was saying that for me, I wouldn't really mind, because I prefer listening to audio as opposed to watching. So if an anchor like that was made, I would still listen to news. However, I doubt if my mom would be pleased with something like that, because she likes to connect with humanity more. So it wouldn't really be a big change on my part. Yeah, something like that.
Okay, thank you. There was then Ahmed, Greg, and Mutani.
Yes, I think on the first few days, like if this comes to pass, it would be so awkward. Yeah, and you'll ask questions, but then with time, like it'll just get normal, and we'll just get along with it. Maybe like some years back now, some decades back, we never had like emails and all that. we used to send letters and, you know, like people to convey messages and all that. But now, like, people as old as, you know, like 80 years old, we are now forced to have emails, if not for anything else, but just, you know, like to get emails from KRA or, you know, like land rate issues and all that. So it has become part and parcel of our lives. I don't know, like, if this has a link with the, our discussion today, but there's a book I'm currently reading, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism by Shoshana Zuboff. And this lady argues that the time, like, it is already the time to fight for a human future, because like tech is overpowering us. And if in her book, like, she argues that, you know, in few years to come, humans will be working for smart machines. We will lose our jobs to them, but then we'll be forced to work, you know, like for them. Currently, like, an AI, like a robot news anchor won't be able to write scripts and all that. So we'll have to write for them scripts to read. So we'll be working, you know, like from behind the scenes, obviously at a cheaper price, but then our real jobs would be taken by the smart machines.
Thank you. Thank you very much for those. I think it will take some time for us to unpack everything, Ahmed, you've said there. And I really like that you have cited that book. In fact, I recently tweeted about it. I tweeted the cover of that page on my social media, In the Age of Surveillance Capitalism. She was being interviewed in the documentary that I first shared with you, that is called In the Age of the AI. And she made some very interesting predictions. She's actually the person I credited that quote to, where I was saying that we thought that we were using social media. Little did we know that social media was actually using us. We thought that we were searching on Google, but we did not know that Google was actually searching us. So I really like those perspectives you raised there. Where did you get your book from? Maybe everyone else can try to, if anyone is interested. Where did you buy yours? You bought it on Amazon?
Prestige.
Okay, it's being stocked at Prestige. I will share the cover, or you can share the cover for anyone who's interested in that book. Really interesting. And if anyone is interested in issues around surveillance, which is also a part of the term paper that you will write for your class, surveillance, but this specific form of surveillance is capital surveillance, where now advertisers and you know, the corporate world is surveilling us for capital benefits. That's a book you really have to read. Thank you very much, Ahmed. Greg, Mutanyo, and Beatrice, briefly.
I'm trying to unmute. I wanted to dispel fears around the theory that machines will take away the jobs from humans. And why I'm saying this is there is a rationale around there, and I'm posting a link there. There's a rationale around automation of repetitive tasks. Like, it doesn't make sense that you still have people opening doors every day, and that's what they do from morning, or just receiving and stamping checks or stuff like that, you know, for example. And the idea or the rationale around this is automate repetitive tasks so that humans can focus on higher order thinking. type of tasks which machines would not do, and even artificial intelligence cannot sort of get there. And when I hear people being afraid that machines will take away the jobs from humans, I actually feel it's human beings fearing taking higher responsibilities for providing either the logic that would go into the computers, or basically focusing on the higher order type of things that machines cannot necessarily do. But anyway, this is of course very debatable, but I feel there is actually no need for people to be afraid that machines will take away their jobs.
Awesome, thank you very much. And while I will be closing, I have a slide that is actually probably, you kind of really said what I needed to say in that slide, where I'm actually looking, do we really need to fear? Do we have to integrate with machines and start looking at what you've profoundly put there, the idea of higher order thinking, that you look at that Bloom's taxonomy and you're looking at the ideas of creation, analysis, synthesis, evaluation, and application. And, at the lower levels, then you leave that to machines and things like that. Thank you very much. Profound, Greg. Mutanu, Beatrice, briefly, please.
For me, I want to take us back to lesson 1, where we were asking, do humans control tech and humans and tech, and the cycle it creates? I think these two, you cannot separate these two tenets. That's why AI, I want to assume, will never take over, because for them to be, for AI, for AI to assume the human self, then it has to have humans who it can, what is the word that I'm looking for? Who it can copy, for lack of a better word. And the thing about humans is that humans evolve, they're ever changing. Yeah, I guess that was my point.
Okay, again, from a social, another believer of the school of thought of social determinism, that, probably, technology will never outpace us or outperform us. Thank you. Beatrice, thank you, Mutanu. Beatrice.
I think the reason I'd raised my hand is because everybody was of the idea that I think Greg and was it Mutanu have talked about it. I think for specific automated, small tasks, then yes. But for something like presenting, I think, like personally, if I look at the presenters that I have gravitated towards, somebody like, say, Larry, though it was because I identified with him as a person, because everybody is reading the same news. But there's somebody that you'll gravitate towards, and it's usually because of their humanity. So I think there are things that AI can take over, but at the end of the day, really, there's nothing to be worried about. I wouldn't watch news with an AI.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much, Beatrice, for those final remarks there in terms of that discussion around the futures and all that. So let me just now switch on to towards the last section of my presentation, where I would like to primarily focus on AI within our profession or within our discipline. And I know a lot of us are not necessarily in journalism per se, but when you think about the idea of writing, then writing is something that really cuts across our profession, whether you are a comm dev person or corporate communications person and things like that. But, like a summation of the things that have been said here is, when you're thinking about the idea of AI within the field of communication, there are some points of reflection that we actually need to come to. And I think I'm very glad that I have seen some of those things being articulated in the chat. Number one is the idea of retooling and reskilling, that there will be a continuous need for people, for them to remain relevant, to continue to, I mean, not just to continue, but to have this continuous lifestyle of retooling and reskilling. And I think that is why then, I think it's Mercy who has posted something on chat, and she was saying that we need, is it you, Mercy, that we need now, whatever in AI, where is it? Yes, you're saying that let's look also into mastering computer communication, programming, computer languages, and things like that. And Maureen is waiting in there, and she's talking about having a master of art in AI communication and things like that. Exactly what I had in mind when I was preparing this slide, that there is need not just to think of yourself that today you have a master's degree in communication from USIU, that's it. I think in the future, learning as now not just in the future. I think learning now for our lives will become just like a perpetual thing, that you're always doing this course to become relevant. And I think some time back, I was having a conversation with Mercy when these classes started, and we were talking about SEOs, if you remember. And one of the things we were saying in that conversation is SEO is something that is so fluid, that the kind of SEO you learned today might not be relevant tomorrow. It's such an annoying thing, by the way, that you have to learn, this is how SEO for Google advertising works. Then you learn that and you get a certificate. And then 1 week later, or even 3 months later, everything you learn from Google advertising for SEO for Google ads, it's completely relevant. You cannot use it because now things have advanced. There's new coding that is being used, and so on and so forth. So the point to make out of that is that idea of continuous retooling and continuous reskilling. And my thinking around this was, you don't necessarily have to go to school. For instance, you don't have to come to USIU to do another master's in, let's say, AI. By the way, I've seen that USIU started a very interesting master's in business analytics in the School of Business. I was actually thinking of enrolling for something like that, but I noted they need someone with a computer science background. It's the first batch of students they are rolling out in that. It's probably one of the most competitive, it's one of the most unique degrees offers in the Kenyan market now, where someone is just getting these insights on business intelligence and things like that. Then also looking at the idea of the working conditions in the industry. Will they get better? Will they get worse? Will they become difficult? Probably we've discussed this before, and we have looked at things around probably what people are saying. If you look at how working was during COVID, and we are still within that working phase, that you are interacting with machines more. At the end of the day, you feel like you miss your colleagues, you want to go back to the office, you want human interaction, which again brings us that point to what Sami Derrick was saying about the documentaries, watching that there will be need for human connection, that human beings are becoming lonely and lonely. And by the way, before I forget, in case there is anyone who does not have a platform, you can choose Tinder. Or if there's anyone who is very interested in trying to understand Tinder as a platform or social interaction, I think Tinder would be very interesting. I have never really studied Tinder before, but I just thought from its use and what I've heard about it, do you guys have an account? Does anyone have a Tinder account in this class? Or anyone who is not?
I had one.
You have one.
I
Do
had
you use
one,
it?
past tense.
Oh, you had one. I also had one, by the way, at some point. Yeah. I also had one. I mean, when you think about the idea of Tinder and what's happening, there's so much you can think about exactly what Sami Derrick you're saying about that the need to connect with other human beings and, you know, this interplay of technology. So working conditions in industry from a professional perspective, if Tinder is a social utility, then what are the business prospects then? Do you think then PR companies will become stronger and better, more effective and efficient? Will media houses collapse? Will we have new media houses and things like that? So there is that idea of business prospects becoming a critical issue. And if you look at sustenance models, for instance, you think about things like now media houses are, almost every media house now is telling you, scan this QR code for you to read the rest of the news, scan this QR code for you to see the headlines, scan this QR code for you to read what is in the Daily Nation tomorrow, and so on and so forth. Those are some of the things or the affordances at the business prospect level for communicators. Then finally, there's the idea that we've really exhausted there around job prospects. Will we become obsolete? Will we become outmoded as communicators, whether at the level of journalists or corporate communication or com dev? Will AI, you know, outdo us? So when you think about this point of reflection, they are not exhaustive, but you know, they are substantial. There is need to think about that interaction of technology, AI within the communication. But as we speak right now, when you look at the existing state of affairs, AI is already doing some amazing work in terms of enabling communicators to become better at their job, probably relieving us from that what Greg was telling us, that idea of automated tasks that can probably be scheduled. Nowadays now, a radio station can just go on for a whole week without someone in the studio because, you know, it's been scheduled and things like that. And then you also look at things like the experience of communication is becoming richer and richer. And within this context, you may want to interrogate that point of reflection on immersive journalism or immersive technologies, or even immersive watching of videos, what you're calling 360 videos. That and there's an example here that although we cannot watch this, it's called Damming the Nile by the BBC. If you follow the news of the region, you know that President Ahmed Bie, is that his, what's it, how do you pronounce the name of the Ethiopian, the head of government, Abiy
Ahmed.
Yeah. Yes, Ahmed Abiy. He launched, yes, that one, Abiy Ahmed. Yes, thank you, Ahmed. Last week, but one, is it last week or last week, but one, he launched this biggest hydroelectric plant in Africa. That is drawing waters from River Nile. And if you've been following the discussions there, you know the controversy around drawing these waters of River Nile. So BBC did some very, very interesting, and I would encourage everyone, probably if you have the gadgets, to watch this thing, Damming the Nile. It's one of the best forms of immersive journalism I have ever seen anywhere, because what they've done, if you have these VR gadgets, the virtual reality gadgets, and you are able to be watching that 360 video, it actually immerses you into the experience of the damming. You can see how the workers are constructing. It's like it transports you entirely. All your senses, your consciousness is transported to the dam itself. You can feel the waters rushing into the dam, and you know everything, the sight, the sound, the feel, you know, like the complete senses are taken there. So when you think about that, you know, impact, it's something that technology really is helping communicators become very powerful using 360 videos. You have seen gamers now, okay, the kind of gamers we've seen is when they're using these technologies for bad, and probably someone is beating a wall, because the point that wall is, there is in the virtual reality, they are consuming something different that is the one than the one that is in their sitting room. But ideally, what is happening there, then immersive communication is becoming so powerful as a way of utilizing artificial intelligence to enhance our consciousness of the process of communication. Then things like fact-checking and fake news detection. If you have noted that now a lot of applications, if you are following what is happening in Russia and Ukraine, you may have seen how a lot of fake news is being debunked using artificial intelligence. Just before I logged into the class, I had just watched a video about this fake picture about, it's actually a fake video about a dad hugging her daughter. And then it was like meant to create sympathy from viewers and things like that, yet it was a fake video. It was able to be debunked. Then yesterday I was watching a documentary by Putin and how Putin employs propaganda, and the guys who did the documentary were able to debunk so many things that Putin was doing, like using technology to identify certain characters who speak during TV events. They could be crying, they could be, you know, whatever emotions they are portraying. And these are people who are paid by Kremlin because Kremlin wants things to be portrayed in a particular way. Then you think about all these ideas of fact-checking, fake news detection, and the artificial intelligence that is being used there. It's really, really amazing. And we can go on and on and on about all this. So you think about many media houses are employing technology at different levels. We've already seen China State's Xinhua News Agency looking at that idea of using robots for broadcasters. There is a whole list I had prepared here. Probably I will not run it down. But if you think about, almost everyone who is communicating is trying to remain relevant, to remain in touch with their audiences, and to meet their audiences by the use of technology and to get feedback and so on and so forth. Even the idea of social media are also increasingly employing technology. And that is why now if you read this book on surveillance capitalism, actually people like Facebook, Twitter, I mean, when you think about the big boys in the club, and almost everyone else there is employing artificial intelligence at very different levels, but with different implications on audiences and the processes of communication. So let me not run down all that, but probably it's important to highlight the idea of chatbots, that chatbots as forms of communication. And in mind, you can have chatbots at different levels. I don't know, those of you who use iPhones, think about what Siri does to you, that Siri is able to remind you this, Siri is able to tell you this. If you're using Microsoft Cortana, if you're using applications by Google, Alexa, play me this song, Alexa, what is happening, Alexa, things and around that. Chatbots, very important points of reflection when you're thinking about communicative capacities or affordances of the digital age. And particularly, if you look at how chatbots were employed during the royal wedding, I don't know how many of us watched the royal wedding. It's one of the most successful deployment of chatbots, because these chatbots were not just able to connect with audiences, but they were also able to translate the proceedings of the chatbots, I mean the royal wedding, into people's languages. I think there's a point where in my points of reflection here, I don't know how many languages the chatbots were able to pick during the chat during the royal wedding as it was happening. But that's very important, coming back again to what I was saying about language and machine learning becoming so effective that something is happening and this thing can actually be translated into your own language. So you probably don't, in future, you will not probably need to study any foreign language because these machines will help us and so on and so forth. So a lot of questions start to emerge as I come to, the home stretch of my presentation. Is man better than machine, or is machine better than man? Cycling us back again to techno-determinism, social determinism, actor network, and so on and so forth. Within the field of communication, there are certain things that are very important. For instance, how you communicate is not just about what you say, but it's also how you say it, how you express yourself when you're saying it. So when you think about if you're communicating something that is going to have a direct impact on the emotions of your audiences, or it's something remorseful or sad, or even points of joy and so on and so forth, there is need for communicators to have that human touch while they are communicating. And that's still something that is very innately man-like. So like we've already exhausted that point about creativity being very much like, the preserve of mankind more than technology. Then in that sense, you'd see that clearly man is a better machine in that sense, is better than machine. And even when you think about communicating stories like terrorism stories, or stories of accidents, how you tell those stories, then machines might not be the best ways, may not be the best tools to tell such stories, because those stories require a lot of emotion, a lot of human kindness, even what we call human interest stories, because they are springing from that idea of human interest. So algorithms lack the human capacity to make connections not previously experienced in terms of those kind of human domain. But we also say that AI itself, like Greg was telling us, can help us a lot in doing things like error reduction. Today we are talking about aviation industry being one of the safest means of transport, because the level of error has been reduced so significantly that anybody can just wake up and feel so safe boarding a plane than going into your car or into a train and so on and so forth. Then, that idea of daily applications, technology helps us with things like that, where we are able to program them, and we don't need to always be doing those, manual tasks that probably do not require higher order thinking skills or capacities. But also we have weaknesses, like, the idea that these are computers, these are programs, they will need to be upgraded, they have maintenance cost. Also things like hacking into the system and so on and so forth. And we cannot forget that idea of unemployment. Definitely some jobs are going to be knocked out of the queue, or they're already being knocked out of the queue. So if you think about these jobs around where automation is clearly taking place, you watch these documentaries on Amazon and things like that, it becomes clearly evident that some jobs will definitely have to go. But wherever any new job goes, you will always find that probably another job is also being created and things like that. So it's nothing really to be scared about, but something to actually make us think about what makes us relevant in what we do, what makes us relevant in our industry, what will make us relevant not just today but even tomorrow, and so on and so forth. So bringing back to the idea of retooling and reskilling. And then there are some ethical issues. For instance, when you think about the idea of privacy, when you think about data collection, and you watch documentaries or you read books like the one on surveillance capitalism and the idea of collecting data, and at what point does this data then, at what point do you stop? At what point do you differentiate people's personal data from information that will be of economic benefit to you in terms of security? And this is the paper that you're writing about. At what point should organizations, should governments, should national security intelligence officers go? At what point do they put the stop that now this is going into someone's life? Now this one, we need to stop at this point. We cannot be listening to Benjamin's conversation with his people. We cannot be We cannot be tracking the movement or where Benjamin is going throughout the day, even when he is doing very private business. You know, those are very contested issues that are happening. And when you think about laws that have already been put in place, like the Prevention of Terrorism Act, and the kind of leeway it gives authorities to collect information, it's unfettered, it's unaccounted for, because you have this, you know, what you might call carte blanche approach. You know, you have unlimited access to people's data, however private it is, however personal it is, in the name of national security. At what point then can this debate be balancing the idea of the utility of okay, sorry, someone is activating their mouse there and someone is speaking. Yeah, so we ask ourselves questions around privacy and data collection. And then what I wanted to say is, AI really a threat? And my point here is, when you think about threat in terms of manual efforts being automated, then I don't think that's a threat in any way. Or people do not have to fear job losses because, you know, like I've already said, there is the increase of work efficiency and, you know, creation of jobs elsewhere. So my final position here would be then AI can enable communication as never before, but it also brings new challenges for learning and accountability. Rather than fearing artificial intelligence, communicators can use the technology to improve their reporting, yet they must be transparent about how they are using these algorithms to find patterns of process evidence for their stories or communication. Thank you very much. That brings me to the very last bit of my presentation, or my last point of my presentation, where my main intention was to canvass things around artificial intelligence and how artificial intelligence is being utilized within our field of communication. I've been able to look at the idea of artificial intelligence from how we gain consciousness, and as human beings, how do we gain this consciousness through the perspective of relational thinking or binary oppositions. Then I've been able to look at different levels of AI and predictions of how AI will grow in the future. I have canvassed things around, you know, man being better than machine, or machine being better than man. That eternal debate that will probably never be closed. And I've canvassed things around the strengths and weaknesses of artificial intelligence, as well as ethical challenges that this artificial intelligence presents. Do we have any question? Do we have any comment? Do we have any point of clarification at this point?
I think that was a really interesting session. I think it was very clear. I think you mentioned at some point that you're quite passionate or like really interested in AI, so it was very clear. But yeah, I enjoyed this class.
Thank you very much for that kind comment. Okay, anyone else? Question, comment, clarification, point of reflection? Great. Probably, I don't think. Oh, sorry, Edel, how are you?
Well,
Your audio is not very clear. Okay.
Confidence of knowing that actually artificial intelligence is not going to take over our jobs is very, very important. That clarity for me has really been good, because nowadays they just, you just hear, hey, now you need to do the jobs of the future, because in a few years, some jobs won't be there anymore. So, it just informs us when we are making decisions about career, or even informing other people, yeah. how to move forward in this digital age. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you. You're welcome. Great. I cannot see anyone else who is raising their point.
Mwalimu,
so maybe yes, please.
This is
Immaculate.
Immaculate. Thank you. Hi, how are you?
I'm fine.
Thank you for the session. That was really good. I just wanted to ask, when are you available in campus during the week?
I have a meeting on Friday. I have a physical meeting on Friday there.
Oh, okay. So you don't have a specific day and time when you are available?
Not really. Is there anything you need that requires a physical presence?
I'll give you a call.
Okay, sure. That's great. No problem. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Mercy, Maureen?
Thanks, Doc. You had mentioned in a previous conversation that we could negotiate an extension on the term paper. That we are due to submit next week, if that's week 9. And the other thing is a clarification on information you got from Marcy today that we're supposed to start our presentations for the platform papers starting next week.
Yes.
So yeah, okay.
In fact, I wanted to speak to that. Thank you, Maureen. So yes, I am very happy to extend the deadline of that submission, because that submission ideally will be the last paper that you are doing. So it will be the equivalent of your, like final exam, to be the equivalent of that. So probably, can we push it to week 12? Is that fair enough?
I'd like to suggest, if it's the paper, the final exam, can we push it to the exam week? Because I think that's the case for if you're doing, if the paper or an assignment is the equivalent of the final exam.
Yeah. Okay, fine. That's okay. Let me actually first find out whether you remember we didn't have this, and people like Mercy and others who have been in the program for quite a while, you know that final exams have not been a must, that you do what we were subjected to do on last week. In fact, previously my mid-semesters were not sitting exams, but the university came up with this mandatory expectations that all courses must have a sitting exam. So can you allow me first to actually clarify whether it is a must to have a final, because I know it's always been optional. It's a must to have a final sitting exam. I don't know whether that has changed. Does anyone have communication around that? Any clarification?
I think from what I know for this semester, it was just the mid-sem that they had firstly said needs to be a sit-in, but there wasn't any confusion about the final. Yeah.
But then we also have our Mark 60-10 end of semester as a project, not really an exam.
That is what I needed to clarify, because someone was telling me that everything is not adding up to 100%. So instead of loading you with so many other term papers, and you've already done the platform presentation and given the paper and the surveillance paper, I don't think there is any need to test any further, frankly speaking. If all those things can come to 100%, the better, instead of coming up with a whole new set of assignment that will load onto everything that we've already done. So you've already done the mid-semesters, which are accounting for 30%. You have already done participation, which is 10%, I believe. Attendance and participation, that makes 40%. Then there is the platform presentation and the paper thereof. So the rest of the marks probably can come from the surveillance paper, and then you take your time and do a really comprehensive and good paper out of it. I think that will honestly be enough testing for a program. I mean, for a course, not a program.
Thanks, Doc. That's really helpful. The then we can talk about the expectations for next week's presentation.
Yes,
Are we
yes,
submitting the
great.
paper in advance of the presentation? Please clarify.
Great. So I think that is clear. So now what we need to do is first, we need to have two class presentations per session. So I had already sent communication that next week we will have Twitter and Facebook guiding the class. And I have already met the Twitter team and we discussed a lot of ideas on how they wanted to approach the paper. And I am actually very comfortable now you are approaching it from our discussion, unless you changed your mind. So that's really good. I look forward to your presentation next week. Then after that, then the Facebook team will canvass issues. If you want to set up a meeting just to see how the direction of things are going, I'll be very happy to share. I mean, to have a point where we can discuss your work before you do the presentation. So that's that. Then you don't need to submit the paper immediately after the presentation. And the reason for this is because I believe myself and colleagues will give some thoughts into what you've presented. And that means you might want to incorporate or you might want to reject altogether anyway. So you can just have a week or two and submit the platform-based paper for assessment. But assessment will be at two levels, the presentation level and then at the paper level. So you can, let's just say you can present the paper 2 weeks after your main presentation. Is that clear?
Yes, Doc. Thank you very much.
Okay, fine. Then I don't have any other business for the day. Maureen, your hand is raised. Do you want to say something or ask?
Sorry, like Greg said, we never really remember to take it
Yeah,
down.
that's okay. That's okay. Cool. Thanks very much. I do not have any other business of the day.
Can I just ask a final one? So which group will go after the Facebook and Twitter?
I thought you were the one who drew the rota, which you actually shared.
No, I only shared the groups. So yeah, I only shared like the how people had decided to go by like. Also, were you following that?
That is not. I mean, because I had requested you draw up the rota.
Okay. Okay. Okay, that makes sense then. So I guess let me just tell the class. So the order in which you guys had put in your groups is the same one for presentation. So Facebook and Twitter was number 1 and number 2. So 3 and 4 will be and so and so and so. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, you guys do a good job. Bring us some exciting discussions, illustrations, and points of engagement. And yeah, I look forward to the student-led sessions.
Sir, please remember to check on those of us who have not yet received our grades.
Yes, that's okay. I will. Great. Thank you very much. Have a good night. Thanks.
Good
Thanks,
night. Yes,
host.
Mwalimu, pole so much. Quick recovery to her.
Thank you very much. We pray for health.
All right. Have a good night. Thank you for a good engaging session.
Great. Welcome. Have a good night, too.
Okay. Bye.